Hey folks, we're back for another mandolin video lesson here on the channel. If you're new here, my name's David, and in this video, I want to show you how to play that standard bluegrass song, Bury Me Beneath the Willow, and I want to show you how to play it 3 different ways. When you're playing a kick or a solo to a bluegrass singing song like this, we really have to switch gears from our experience playing fiddle tunes and other instrumental music, right? Because singing songs usually have simpler melodies, the notes are usually a lot longer too, so it can be challenging to make things sound full and interesting on our instrument. But I want to show you some ways that you can expand on a melody to make it sound a little bit more bluegrassy. We'll start off with the very basic version of the melody, then we'll look at some melodic variations and some double stop ideas to help flesh out the sound even more. And because this is such a common tune in bluegrass circles, it is helpful to have a bunch of ideas to draw on, so that way you can keep things interesting whenever that circle comes back around and around to you to play a solo. So my hope is that by the end of this video, you'll have 3 new arrangements under your belt to mix and match up as you will whenever you're back at that jam. So grab your mandolin and let's get started. And we're going to dive into some playing right off the bat here. We're going to do this song in the key of G because it's a really common key for this song. So for starters, here's a refresher on your G major scale. G only has 1 sharp in the key signature, so all the other notes are going to be natural except for this 1 F sharp note. Here's what that scale sounds like in 2 octaves on the mandolin. Definitely try this out here. You can just use your ear or you can find those note names on the fretboard. Even if you've played this scale 100 times before, just try it again because it's always helpful to get that shape into your fingers when learning a new melody in a key like this. And for this song, all the notes of the melody fit right within this scale here. And with that framework in mind, let's actually try this out. And I know sometimes we mandolin players get a little excited when we come to play a song like this, and we might throw in a bunch of extra notes that may or may not need to be there. And that's fine. I just want to make sure that we don't lose the melody because the melody is going to be the most important part of whatever song that you play. So when you come to learning a vocal tune like this, it's really helpful to learn the melody simply first and try to think of it almost as if you're singing with your instrument as you're playing this song. You know, the great banjo player Earl Scruggs used to talk about this a lot, and it was really evident in his playing whenever he was doing songs like this. Even though he was playing a bunch of extra notes with that 3-finger style banjo roll that he invented, you could still hear the melody shine through in whatever he was playing. It was almost like he was singing at you with his banjo. I know it's a tall order, but we're going to try to do just that. And we're going to start off with this real simple singable version of the melody that we'll use as a foundation for all the other variations we'll try out. It might even be helpful to try singing or humming along with this version as you learn it to help internalize it better. And there are just a couple little techniques to watch out for. In this arrangement, we have some hammer-ons, both on the open string to the 2nd fret like this, and from the 2nd fret to the 5th fret, which might be a little bit harder, but just make sure that you're sticking the landing with your ring finger to make that 2nd note ring out. Also, we've got this ring finger slide from the 5th fret of the D string to the 7th fret. Other than that, this first version of the melody is pretty straightforward, so let's just try this out a little bit slower with the transcription on screen. There you go, that's the song, right? And if you're a beginner, this might be a great place to pause and to camp out for a little while because sometimes even simple arrangements like this can be deceptively challenging. I was actually finding myself struggling to play through this as well, just to make sure that every single note sounded exactly the way that I wanted it to and to get that sustain and that tone that I was looking for. So make sure to take your time and make this the way you want it to be. Also, sometimes simpler can be better too, and there's no shame in playing a really solid version of the melody like this at the jam whenever we get back there. Alright, but before moving on, let's circle back and check out the chords to this tune. And you may have seen through the transcription on screen already that the progression is actually pretty simple, right? But let's make sure we've got these down. First, you can always start with these easy open chords here. But this song is really a great chance to keep working on our chop chord shapes, because since it's such a popular bluegrass song, you'll find yourself in a lot of situations playing this with other people when you'll need to be chopping on the backbeat. If you don't know these chop chord shapes already, here are the 3 chords that we'll be working with for this song. And once you're familiar with these shapes, let's actually try it out over the progression now. So remember, we'll be doing that backbeat chop on beats 2 and 4 here. Here we go. Practice these chords, I definitely recommend playing along with some recordings, because it's going to be way more fun than just chopping all alone by yourself at home, right? And there's some really iconic recorded versions of this song too. The most iconic might be that Skaggs and Rice version that, Ricky Skaggs plays on. He's got some incredible tone on that record. And then more recently, there's been a reprise of this duo version on the Michael Daves and Chris Thile record, Sleep with One Eye Open. The cool thing is that both of those recordings are also in the key of G, so they'll be pretty easy to play along to here. I'll put a link to those recordings in the YouTube description here. Also, shameless plug here, but I've got backing tracks available for the song over on my Patreon site. We recorded mandolin, banjo, guitar, and bass at 3 different tempos, so you'll have plenty of opportunities to try these chords and all the melodic variations out if you want to. Also, you'll find PDF copies of the tab notation for this song, the chord diagrams, and a bunch of other learning content that you won't find here, so be sure to check it out in the link above if you haven't already. Well, on to the next version of this melody, and I'm just dubbing this one the melodic variation, because we're just using that same core structure of the basic melody we learned, and we're filling in the gaps with some repeated notes and some extra notes along the major scale to get from one point to the next. And it should sound something like this. So you'll notice we're still doing some similar slides and hammer-ons like we were earlier, but there's some new features here as well. First, we've got a little bit bigger pickup here, which leads us into the downbeat of that first measure. Also, if you've never seen one of these tiny little baby notes here, this is called a grace note. These guys don't really get any rhythmic attention. What you're supposed to do is just play that note as fast as possible and feature that full 8th note that happens on the 5th fret of our D string afterwards. On the 3rd line of this version's 2nd measure, we've got a little melodic variation to keep things interesting, and we're using a B flat note. This is where we're getting a little bit outside of the scale for a split second before getting back to that B natural halfway through this measure. And lastly, we're playing this little bluegrass sounding lick at the end of the arrangement, because that's a great way to add a punctuation mark to the end of your solo to give it, a little extra oomph and bring it home. And be sure to watch out for that extra grace note slide we have here on this lick. We're actually going to play this with an upstroke on our right hand, which might feel a little bit strange at first. Speaking of pick strokes, which I love talking about apparently, we need to make sure that our downstrokes are lining up with the beats in the measure. And for this song, we're going to be alternating with our right hand for all those groups of 8th notes, down and up, always starting with a downstroke. All right, let's give this a shot now. And on to the double stops now. This version takes the same structure we just played in the melodic variation, but now we're adding in some extra notes to give that double stop bluegrass sound. And we're just using 3 different shapes. We're just moving these shapes around to best fit with the melody and whatever chords that we're playing over. And we're using a lot of double stop shapes that center around that chop chord shape we were looking at earlier. Check out how these double stops intersect with this chop shape here. Also, there are some additional features to this arrangement, like this slightly different pickup that we have here. Also, we've got a few more of those grace note slides on these double stops. And we've got an extended ending lick. This one uses both the B flat and the F natural note. Those are the blue notes that kind of make this sound a bit more bluegrassy as well. And for the most part in this arrangement, the melody is happening on the lowest note out of the 2 notes in the double stop. So keep that in mind to make sure that you're making that melody sing through. Let's give this a go. All right, well, now that you've got these 3 versions down, try mixing and matching up some of the ideas in this. You can, interchange phrase for phrase, measure for measure, or you can use the same process to come up with your own variations. Just start simple and then connect the dots using the scale or double stops to flesh out the sound. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out my Patreon page for those play along tracks and the PDF transcriptions. And while you're at it, give this channel a subscribe because there's tons more mandolin videos coming your way. I'll see you then.